What we're here to talk about today in this continuing series, which has been sponsored by Sekonic, is the why, the what, and the how of creating a portable studio. First of all, let's start with the why. Well, many photographers, in fact, probably the biggest percentage of them, are making money by shooting part-time. They don't have full-blown studios and they need to be mobile. Secondly, a lot of photographers who have maybe had storefronts. Many of them have closed their storefront studios and now work from their homes. Our studio, we have a studio space, but we also have a lot of clients that love having their portrait sessions done either on location or in their home. It's very comfortable to them, it's very convenient, and we're finding that a lot of people really prefer to have their portraits done in that kind of setting. We also want to make the most out of equipment we own with a minimum investment in new gear. So which brings us to the what. Let's focus on gear. Now, assuming you've got a camera body, and yes, a backup was nice. In fact, if you're serious about doing this professionally, you've got to have a second camera body. You don't necessarily have to match the model, so if you have one kind of mid to high end, you can have a lower end body just in case, because you don't want to be there and have your gear fall apart or get knocked over and be out of business. So make sure you have a second body, you want to have the appropriate lenses, and you're going to want to have at least 2 flash units. Some of the other gear that can help make a portable studio efficient are going to be some of the stuff you see right here, which we're going to talk in more detail. Light stands, which I've got over here, well, you'll see it a little bit later, and C-stands, both with sandbags. And I'm going to talk more about sandbags, but here's one right here, and it's really simple. It's a bag filled with sand. Small investment, really big payoff, because these little things will protect your gear from falling over. If you're photographing, particularly in someone's house, you don't want to have things getting knocked over, you don't have kids running into it. It'll protect your gear, and it will protect your client's belongings. After the stands, some kind of radio trigger. I'm going to mainly be using Pocket Wizard Plus 3s today. I'll discuss the Mini and Flex for any of you that are interested, but we're going to be shooting manual because we want that control, and once you see how it's done, I think you'll probably be convinced it's really something you should consider. After the Pocket Wizard radio triggers, grip accessories. Now, the current term grip basically covers any mechanical device that is used to hold equipment in place. Now, for our portable studio, besides our stands, we're going to be adding umbrella mounts and something called a Pocket Wizard Caddy, which you'll also see in detail. After that will be our light shaping tools. This is going to include umbrellas, 2 types we're going to use today, shoot through and reflective. Then we're going to go into softboxes. My favorite lighting system is to use a softbox, typically not thought of as portable, but I've got a portable one here. And then last but certainly not least, a light meter. Now, a light meter has so many functions and so many advantages when you're using a portable studio that I really can't imagine not using one. I carry my light meter everywhere I go. Very seldom do I take shots with it, and I never do portraits without a light meter. Now, before we go any further, a couple weeks ago, before the hurricane that hit us, we recorded an overview of the gear that we're going to use today in much more detail. And by the way, when we send out our follow-up email, it will include a list of all the gear that I talk about. Now, before we come back live into the studio and do some shooting, let's take a closer look at the equipment. And don't forget, if you haven't joined the chat room, go ahead and join in and ask the questions there. Let's take a look at some gear. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the tools that will make your portable studio a little better and a little safer. And one of the items that I want to talk about is this. It's called a C-stand. Now, yes, this is substantially heavier than a regular standard light stand, and really that's the idea. When you're at a client's location, it's really dangerous to have people running around and potentially running into stuff and knocking it over. These stands will not easily be knocked over. And I'm going to just go ahead and open this up real quick to a little bigger height. And I can push this thing quite a ways over and it's going to fall back into place. They also travel quite well. As you can see, they open and close very quickly. And this has a base called a turtle base. And there's this locking collar on the bottom. And if I just pull this in, then that folds the legs. And in addition, I can actually remove the legs on this unit so that it makes it much smaller for transport. So this is pretty handy. These are about a $120 investment or so, but when you think of the danger of having your stuff be knocked over, both to your gear and to your potential clients, not a good thing. So this is a real worthwhile investment. Now over here I've got two sets of the kind of portable light system that I would use at a client's location. And this once again is a C-stand. And in this particular case, I'm using a Pocket Wizard Plus 3, an external battery pack, a Canon 580 EX2 flash, and an umbrella mount. And let's talk a little bit more about these umbrella mounts. Now there's a couple of different styles of these things, but I found myself favoring this. Now this just fits on the top of pretty much any light stand. You just slip it over the top nut and crank it down and that's it. What I like about this is this jaw here at the top that allows you to tighten it from the side. It's just very easy. It's kind of like a really big hot shoe, or a cold shoe rather in this case, and you can put your flash on top of here. Right through the front, you can just slide your umbrella or any umbrella type mount like on that Softbox that we like to use. Just tighten it into place and you're ready to go. And that's what we've got right here. You can see I've got the flash mounted in this slot, just tightened down. I've got the umbrella coming through. And then I have both the battery pack, which has its own strap to mount to the stand, and the Pocket Wizard Plus 3 mounted to the stand and then connected into my flash. Here's another piece I really like. This is called a Pocket Wizard Caddy. So the Pocket Wizard Caddy screws into the threaded receptacle on the back of the Pocket Wizard, and it has this kind of bungee cord built into it. With this indentation, it just fits up against the post, and then you just wrap the cord around and connect it on the far side. And you can actually connect this to pretty much anywhere. You could actually strap it to a flash as well. And this will securely hold it on any kind of light stand. So this keeps everything in place. Then you just, as you can see, I've already got this one set up. Run the cable from the Pocket Wizard into the flash, and it's really good to go. And again, the beauty of having this on something like a C-stand is I can go over pretty far, and it's going to come right back into place, which really is a safer way of doing things. Also, the addition of the Pocket Wizard means no cables. So this is a freestanding system. I can just move it around wherever I like, and that's going to be my light. Now, whether you're using a C-stand or a standard light stand, this is something that's really worthwhile to invest in. And this is simply a sandbag. And the beauty of these is it's going to add weight to the bottom of your stand, whichever one you use, and really help keep it in place. On a C-stand, it's really designed to sit right over the legs. I can just let it sit there, and you can barely move the thing at this point. It's really going to stay steady. If you're dealing with a standard light stand like this one right here, it takes a little more work. You have to thread it through the bottom to try to get it into place, but it goes a long way to keeping this thing from falling over. As nice as these standard camera light stands are, let me get this out of the way. As nice as these standard camera light stands are, they are a little top heavy when you put all this gear on them, and it's pretty easy, as you can see, to knock them over. That's why I really favor the safety of a C-stand. However, if you're going to use these, and again, remember, it's pretty easy to do that, invest in a couple of sandbags. I'll just put that over. Now, if I put it, the sandbag's going to keep it from falling over. Even if it goes pretty far, I can bring it all the way over here, and it's going to pull it back into place. Again, it's going to protect your gear, it's going to protect your clients, and it's going to protect your clients' belongings. So you don't want to have to deal with that. Now, this is a different, slightly different type of umbrella mount here. Instead of having the jaws that are actually providing a cold shoe to mount the flash on, in this case what I've got is just the stud that comes with the umbrella mount. And this stud is threaded so that it can fit right in the bottom of the Pocket Wizard. In this case, it's a Flex TT5. So if you're doing TTL stuff, you don't need to have the cold shoe mount, although it's still handy, and then it will fit right in there. A Flex TT5 can fit either in this stud configuration, or you can use the shoe to mount it right into this cold shoe on this type. I favor these because you can go either way with them. These are really handy. They're not expensive. You can look at them online. Just look up umbrella stand. You'll see them probably for less than 10 bucks a piece. Just briefly about the radio transmitters we're using. The Pocket Wizard Plus 3 here, which is a full manual system, and I have the Flex, Mini, and AC3 controller here. This is if you want to do both manual and TTL. This is for a purely manual system. In a home studio situation, I like the control that manual gives you, but if you prefer to shoot TTL, this system's going to work fine as well. It just comes down to which one that you prefer. Which way do you prefer shooting? And that's something you have to figure out for yourself. Lastly, my new favorite tool. I was actually unsure when it was going to first ship if I was going to like it or not. It turns out I've actually fallen in love with this meter. This is the new Sekonic 478DR meter. It's got the radio transmitter in it. The beauty is it pretty much does everything. It will meter my manual flash, and it will meter and allow me to control TTL flash all right from the top of the meter. It's kind of very iPhone looking. Actually, the touch screen allows you to navigate around. Here's the control panel, for example. For TTL control, I can hit minus, minus, minus in thirds of a stop, and it will bring the power down of my TTL flex units right from here. If I'm dealing with full manual on the +3s, I just tell it what channel I'm using. So I can hit the radio channel. I've got control TL for the mini and the flex. I've got standard channels here from 1 through 32. I just tell it what channel I'm on, hit OK, and I can meter right from here, regardless of what kind of pocket widget I'm using. Trust what these are telling you. Again, it's measuring the light falling on the subject, as you've seen through our shoots. It doesn't care what color clothing's being used. It's not going to be affected by the color of the background, the bright or the dark, or the reflectivity of the material that's there. Very easy to use. Once you learn to use this, it's going to help get your camera out of the way. You're going to be able to focus on your subject and just get your images, as you'll see through our shoots. One other thing I really love to do when I'm shooting either at a client's location or in my own studio is I really prefer to shoot tethered. Rather than have to look at the back of the screen on the camera, I get to see the camera profile and the white balance applied to my images as they're coming in, and I get to see them right here in Lightroom. And you can see I have this orange cable here. This is from a company called Tether Tools. Just have tethertools.com, check them out. And I've got the cable going in to the USB port here on my Canon 7D. Now, one really cool accessory, and I don't know why I didn't think of this, is a little attachment that attaches to the strap mount on the camera, and it's called a jerk stopper. And what you do is you attach this to your cable, and then this goes into your camera's USB port. This USB port is in danger of being damaged if someone were to yank this out. By having this cable and this attachment to the USB cable, if I were to pull on this, it stops it from coming out of the camera because it's attached to this strap mount. Really cool idea, really simple, but really important. This allows me to shoot tethered. Now I've got a card in the camera and I'm tethered. That means my images are already saved in 2 spots. It writes it to the card and it sends it directly as I'm shooting right into Lightroom. And again, the beauty of this is I can have my white balance and my camera profile already created. It gets applied on import, so I get to see a really close to final image immediately. The other last piece, also from Tether Tools, is this table. This is a metal table with a foam rubber padding. I have it mounted to a C-stand. This can actually be mounted onto a tripod or onto the stand. And on here I also have one of my favorite accessories. You can't have a table without your coffee holder. The vanilla latte is not included. But it allows me to keep that handy yet out of the way. A great accessory, keeps everything nice and stable. The combination of this table and a C-stand really keeps everything really safe. And since I'm tethered, it's an extra added protection just to keep things from getting knocked over. So the only cabling that I'm using is this tether system to go into the computer. Everything else is wireless. Either I'm using the +3s to fire my lights or the mini and flex. And the choice for that is yours. So look who's here.
Hello.
Our pal Bethany. So we're going to talk a little bit about light meters first before we get into the shooting part. And really the basic of light meter is it gives you all the information you need to control light ratios, measure light distribution in a scene, and tell you the perfect exposure for the faces of your portraits. Your camera cannot do this. It can only give you an average number based on what it thinks is important in the scene. It can't tell you ratios. It can't tell you if light's even across the scene. It's just going to give you that one big number. So if my light's a little darker over here than it is over here, my camera can't tell me that. But that's where a meter comes in. And only a handheld light meter can do that. Now, I've got around my neck here My new favorite, the Sekonic 478DR, which is right here. Kind of looks practically like an iPad, or an iPod rather. It's all digital readouts. It does just about everything. It's very cool. This meter is capable of measuring, firing, and adjusting TTL flash, all from a color touchscreen. And when we're doing manual shooting, we can also change and turn off our zones of which flashes are firing right here from the meter. Bethany's also got, ooh, shocking. We've got here a Sekonic 308S. This is a basic meter that will do basic studio light measurement that we need. It cannot, however, fire our lights from here, like the 478 and the 358 can. This meter and the 478 around my neck can fire the lights right from the meter. In fact, let me give you the 308 back. If you have a 358, there's an optional transmitter that plugs into the back of the 358 that allows you to actually fire the lights from here. And of course, I like having the new toys. I use all of these meters, but I have to admit I've really become enamored with this. Oh, by the way, if you have a 478, or a 758 rather, that will work as well. But again, the beauty I love about this meter is I can take my measurements from here, turn my lights on and off, whether it be manual or TTL. Now, let's go into some of the how. We've discussed gear. Let's get into the how of single or couple subject portraits. So let's start with umbrellas.
Okay.
Would you go grab us a couple of umbrellas? The two umbrellas we're going to play with are a shoot-through umbrella and a reflective umbrella. So here is a shoot-through, and as you're going to see in a little more detail in just a minute, it's as it's called. It's basically a big diffuser, big translucent white panel. It just kind of spreads the light out, gives you a bigger light source. Now, you don't have a lot of light control with these. So we're going to go to the next umbrella. I will still use these. There's times when this is still appropriate, as you're going to see. And thank you. Bethany's angling for Vanna's job. Didn't I hear they have a guy doing that now?
I don't know.
I think I heard they have a guy doing that. This is a reflective umbrella. In this one, instead of shooting through, we'll be shooting into the umbrella. This is silver. Typically, they come in silver or white, with the silver being more specular. And I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but just with the studio lights on, you can see it's adding a lot of light to the side of Bethany's hair. Now, umbrellas are easy to work with and can provide great results. As always, with singles or couples, you need to keep the light close, because if you start to get it further away, then it's just going to become a point light source. And then what happens is your transition from the bright side to the dark side of the face is going to be very harsh. Now, that may be a look that you're after. There's some people that like that. But generally, I like to have a little bit more of a softer transition, or at least some control over that. So let's take a look at the section of our shoot. When was that? It was about 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? Yeah, we're still recovering from Hurricane Sandy here. Let's take a look at the section of the shoot where we used umbrellas first. Take a look. Got Bethany perched on the corner of the sofa here. Now, what we're going to do first is a couple of different shots and light modifiers, as if you're going to your subject, your client's, maybe their house, and you're going to do a photograph of them in their environment. This would also work in your own home studio. And again, the whole idea is this is portable and light and easy to set up. So we're going to do first one. Then a little bit later on, what we'll do is we're going to end up with our grand finale, where we're going to do a group shot. And we're going to have a group of Bethany's, which will be fun. I'll show you how we do that again later. So what I did was, again, we took a shot of the color checker passport. That gave me my white balance. It gave me a color reference. Now, I'm also shooting tethered, which I will also explain. But by shooting tethered, I can have the white balance and the color profile applied to the image as they come in. Where that's really handy is if you have a family grouping, especially if you're photographing children and the parents are around, you can sit them elsewhere, but they can watch the images coming in rather than sitting right off set and saying, smile. We banish parents, by the way, from our studio if they say the S word. No saying smile. So what I do, we did that already. Now, I went ahead and metered before Bethany even got here, but just to illustrate the fact, I'm going to meter right back to her. Now, I'm shooting at 320 ISO. The reason I chose 320 instead of 160 is it allows me to have my flash at a little bit lower power. And that's going to allow it to recycle faster, so I can shoot a little quicker when I see that moment in between the moment, or I catch her off guard. So I've got my settings. I'm 125th of a second at 6.3. And the first thing, as I mentioned, we're using a shoot-through umbrella, which is just what it sounds like. It's a translucent umbrella that the flash is actually firing through. It's just going to diffuse the light a little bit and spread it out. It's still a fairly hard edge, as you'll see, because we don't have any reflectors, but it's going to create an interesting look. So I'm just going to point it right at Bethany. Again, I'm using short lighting. I'm illuminating the side of her face away from the camera, just create a little bit more shadow on this side. And again, remember, shadows are what define the face and give it some three-dimensionality. All right, so I'm at ISO 320, 6.3, 125th of a second. And I'm just going to go ahead and frame. And I do not have to worry about anything other than Bethany. I don't have to keep looking at the camera. I don't have to look at framing. I can just chat with her. And again, we're comfortable with each other, I think. We spent a lot of time together. So I want to get you to kind of start moving a little bit, even, putting up your hand. I like the sweet side of Bethany. She does the real sultry thing as well. But as I've got to know her, she is actually very sweet. And by doing this low power and having the camera on a tripod and having everything framed out, she just gets to do her thing. And I get a beautiful sequence of images that are coming up on the computer. And they're lit perfectly. And that's it. How easy is, yeah, really, how much can you ask for? And then when I see, oh, you were looking. I tried to get you not looking at the camera. And that's the beauty of it. One of the things that's really nice if you're dealing with someone who's not experienced to be in front of the camera is to use a cable release, which I'll hook up a little bit later. So I can come over here and I can chat with you and I can walk around and maybe get you to look at me over here a little bit and maybe just give me a little tilt, a little chin down a little bit, nice right there, and just get you to kind of move. Yeah, whatever. It's really that simple. Now, just to get a different look without changing anything else, we're going to change the light shaper. So I'm going to put you to work.
Okay.
If you'd run over there and get the regular umbrella. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the shoot-through umbrella off the mount. And this is just popping right through there. And again, as you can see, it's just a translucent piece of material. Would double as a regular umbrella in a pinch. Give you that one. And at this time, I've got a regular reflective umbrella. And in this case, it's silver. Silver is a little more specular than the white ones. The white is a little more diffuse. But again, we're using kind of a small light source. And I want to get a lot of throw out of it. So I'm going to put that in here. And obviously the difference is, being a reflective umbrella, I got to turn this around. And I need to adjust the angle so that it's kind of pointing back towards Bethany. And pretty good. So since it's a new reflector, I do need to meter again. But again, this is really quick and easy. And I hit the ISO button by mistake. We're a little further away, so let me bring it in a little bit closer. Now remember, when you're doing your light source, especially if it's a single person, the closer the light source to the subject, the more gentle that transition from light to dark will be into the shadows. So I might even come in a little bit closer this time. Get nice and close. And one more reading. And I'm getting F7. Again, we're still at 320 ISO. So I just went from 6.3 to F7. I'm just going to frame here. Turn this shoulder a little bit this way. Give me a little, that's nice. Flatten your hair on this side a little bit. Nice, beautiful, beautiful. Nice, I like that. And again, I just get to keep shooting. Now you'll see with this umbrella that it's a little more directional than the shoot-through. The shoot-through is kind of throwing the light onto the background a lot more. By having the reflective umbrella with the silver, it's a little more focused. So you're going to see all I changed was the reflector, and you're going to see as the images come up, now the background's darker. So you're separated out from the background. It's a little more dramatic look. And as I take a look at these, and it's also a little more specular, I really like what I'm seeing. It really looks nice. So good. Let me just check my framing a little bit. Yeah, I like that right there. All right, show me the ring. Come on. Yeah, show me the ring. Oh, I got to back off a little bit. Actually, do me one of these, like right there. And that's it. That's it. Sorry, guys. You see the ring? It's too late. It's too late. She's taken. So again, that easy. All we did was switch light shaping tools, and you're going to see a dramatic difference in the images. All right, we got a couple of questions. I understand they're still having some hangups with the chat room, but a lot of you are using Twitter and the chat room in Ustream. So great. I'm getting the questions sent to me here on my iPad, so keep them coming. And again, if you're having trouble, we'll give you an email address later that you can send us email if there's something that's driving you nuts. So first of all, a couple questions to answer. Will there be a listing of the equipment used in today's webinar? Yes. When we do the follow-up email, we will send a complete list of everything we used. Someone asked about the name of the C-stands. The company is Kupo, K-U-P-O. The C-stand that I really love it's got a turtle base. That's the one with the legs that flip around. In fact, I just got 2 of them for Diane, my wife, and she doesn't want to use her regular light stands anymore. Once you start using them, yeah, they're a little bit heavier, but once you start using them, you're not going to want to change. Someone asked about the pros and cons, and this is interesting, of using continuous light versus strobe or flashlights for those of you that are doing video. Well, if you're doing video, obviously you're going to need continuous light source. But again, the whole thing is we're talking about portable studio. Mm-hmm. And the problem with continuous light sources is you either have to plug them in, or if you're going to be running on batteries, you're going to go through a lot of batteries and they're not going to last very long. We're just completely portable. In fact, as I showed you earlier, here's a complete set, a complete light. It's got my strobe in it. It's got the external battery pack. It's got the Pocket Wizard stand, and this is it. I don't know, no cables, nothing to trip over. And with the batteries that are in there, the thing will last all day. Continuous lights, obviously, if you're going to do video, you don't have a choice. When we're in studio, we use strobes that are AC powered. I do favor them. I will ask you to stay tuned, however, because on Thursday, I'm actually picking up my first set of continuous lights for shooting. I really was planning on using them just for commercial work, meaning product photography, because then it's, you're moving stuff around, you're watching how the lights are shaping it. Continuous lights are nice for that, but I've never liked them for portraits before. I may change my mind. So we'll try that.
We'll see.
Yeah, so I'll be using continuous lights. Give me another couple weeks, I'll get back to you on that. In fact, when we do our next session, if I like them, maybe I'll bring in some continuous lights as well. Someone asked if I can suggest inexpensive, they said Nikon flash units, doesn't Nikon or Canon. There are a couple of brand names that really make nice flashes if you're not really concerned about all the TTL connectivity. And as you're going to see as we're shooting, we're doing everything manually. We're going to meter the scene, set the number on the camera, and all the radio triggers are doing is telling the flash to fire. And we're controlling everything from that. To that, I have a couple of flashes that I've had for longer than Bethany's been on the planet, as she reminded me during our last video break. I've got some Vivitar 283s that are over 20 years old that work great. And you can find flashes like that for anywhere from slightly under $100 to maybe $150, $170 that work perfectly fine. They don't do all the TTL function, but they're very consistent flashes, and in this kind of situation we're going to be doing, they work great. So you can use those as well. Someone asked if I find I'm leaning more to the 478 over the 358. I was loyal to my 358 for more than 10 years, and this just came out. And maybe it's the sparklies and the lights and all the interface that I'm attracted to. I do really find myself going to the 478. One of the things I like about this also above the 358 is that I've started getting into video with my cameras, and this has complete video metering as well. So I can set shutter speed and screen angle and all that kind of fun stuff for you video folks and use this meter for that. So it really pretty much does everything you can possibly imagine right from the touch screen. So yeah, I'm sold. I really do like this thing. Someone asked on the shots that you saw, did I have a backlight on the scene? And the answer is, yeah, actually from 2 different sources. Even here, actually, you can kind of see I've got this blue wall back here. we've got a hot light sitting off in the corner that's got a blue gel on it. Yeah, Rick's, yeah, you can see Rick's got it set up over there. That's sending a splash of blue light onto the back wall. In addition, we're shooting in here with studio lights because we're doing a live video. So in some cases, if the shutter speed gets a little low, they start to overpower or start to have a contribution along with the strobe. So if you saw somewhere it got a little bit yellower in the background, even though Bethany had the correct color temperature, that's a spillover of the studio lights. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a little bit of live shooting in a little bit, and I just increased the shutter speed on my camera to either 200th or 250th of a second. That was enough to overpower any contribution that the hot studio lights had. So that keeps our color temperature even, and you'll see the background go to a more kind of just neutral, fading dark gray, even though it actually is a white wall. Let's see. Let me just check anything else. Okay. That's it for now. So somebody asked about correct exposure, about metering. We're going to cover that in a second. So let's talk about my favorite lighting tool, softboxes. We've talked about umbrellas. Softboxes are different from umbrellas in that, one, you've got a more even controlled light distribution. You've got gentle transitions from light to shadow. And you have the ability to use a grid to control the spread of the light. As you might have noticed when I pulled up this box here, this is a Westcott, I believe it's a 16 by 30 softbox. It's an umbrella softbox like you saw the big square Apollo. It just folds down into nothing. And what I've got on the front of this is a fabric grid. And what the grid does is it keeps the light, even though the softbox is fairly controlled, maybe the spread's going to go out this way. By putting the grid in, it really directs the light in a straight line. And it has the light go where you want, but doesn't allow it to bleed off to other places. And we'll see the effect of this in a little bit. For my main light over here, I'm using the square softbox that you saw earlier in the demonstration, and that's what we're going to use as our primary light for Bethany. So let's watch our shoot from the softbox. Okay. When we come back, we'll take some more questions, and then we're going to shoot some stuff live with the softboxes, and we'll take a look to see what contribution the second light can add to our shooting as well. Take a look. Softbox. Okay. All right, so if you grab that. So while she's getting that, I'm going to take off the reflective umbrella. Now, these light shaping tools are great when you're doing a single subject, maybe a couple. Thank you. But when you get to a larger group, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use these. You're going to have to go to something a little wider, like full-out umbrellas and a couple of lights, and we're going to do that in a minute. You can see we've got the standard umbrella mount. And again, we're talking portable studio here. So the real nice thing about these things is they fold down to nothing. That's what I love about these. It's got a hole through the bottom of the case, and it just goes into the same opening that we've used. The light is shooting back into the umbrella. It's very silvered inside, but the addition of this extra material is going to soften it a little more. It's going to give us a nice broad light source, and I can get it right up close to Bethany, really shape the light, have a nice fall off, yet control it from not hitting the background. And again, I'm using short lighting here. Actually, I do need to raise that up a little bit. Because again, we're doing headshots here mostly. And I'm going to get this up right nice and close. And I'm also going to feather it a bit. What I'm doing is I'm changing the direction of the light. Rather than going back to the wall, I'm having it come across her. So this piece that's in front of her will wrap around to this side of her face a little bit and help to fill in the shadows, yet keep the light off the back wall, which is going to allow that to stay a little darker. So let's try that. Once again, I'm just going to remeter here. I've got 5.6 now because we've added a lot more material in between, so it's cutting down on the light a bit. From the distance I'm at, 5.6 is probably okay. But what I'm going to do is take a shot, and then I'm probably going to increase. Yeah, I think I'm going to increase a bit to power on the flash. It's at 8th power right now. I might bring it up to 1/4. Let's get your shoulders a little more square to me, a little bit. Yeah, nice, just like that. Beautiful. I love the look of a softbox, especially, as we're shooting. Bethany gets into the flow. She knows what to do. Look at me right here. Give me the look of I'm trying to plan an engagement party, and the boyfriend just is not helping. I've already heard that story today. Okay, and we're getting absolutely beautiful results. And I can change kind of the look and feel of it by adjusting the position of Bethany to the softbox. Okay, that's good, right, like that. Yeah, I like that right there. Head towards me a little bit. Now eyes start to come towards me. Right there, that's it, beautiful. And love that look. Now we're going to go perfectly profile. So look right into the light. Right at it. Turn, like, square your shoulders a little more right to it. Okay, with F7, right at the light. And that's really nice. Let me just back off a little bit. Just going to give myself a little more wiggle room. All right, turn your head away from me a little bit more. A little more. Right there. Now turn back towards me. Start coming around. Chin down. Tilt your head this way a little bit. And look at me with your eyes. Actually, look about right here. That's good right there. Oh, love it. So what I was after when I was asking Bethany to move her eyes around is, actually, if you look at the camera, actually look over there. So want to make sure, if we're doing something that's not profile or head on, that when we're going off to one side, you don't want to have her eye popping out, her far eye. You want to make sure you have a little bit of skin just beyond the eye. So as you turn your head, you can see some of the skin of just beyond her eye starts to show. Also, when you're having the eyes look back towards the camera, so turn your head this way again. So now look back towards me. So when she looks right back at the camera, you'll see her far eye is right up against the one side. There's no white. And it looks prettier if there's a little white on either side of the eye. So that's why I asked her to just move her eyes to here. And as she does that, you see a little bit of the white start to show up on the close side. It just makes it look a lot more natural. All right? Very cool. So we've got shoot through. Mm-hmm. We did regular reflective umbrella. We've got our Apollo softbox. So I think it might be time for the group shot.
Group shot.
So we're going to set up for our group shot. Now for the group shot, we're going to need another light because we're going to need to illuminate this whole set kind of fairly evenly. You're going to have to do that when you've got a group. So what we're going to do is just introduce 2 Speedlights. Again, I'm just using Canon 580EX2s. We're going to put them in standard reflective umbrellas to try to illuminate the entire scene, and then we're going to do our
fun group shot.
Fun group shot, all right? So we'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, so you guys are really into Twitter, so great. That really seems to be working. So keep the questions coming. And a couple of great questions. A couple of you are asking specific questions about how to meter, which we're going to do just in a minute. I'll go over the process and which direction to meter and all that. A couple asked, what power am I using on the flash? Good question. First of all, that's going to depend on what ISO I'm using. Again, remember, we're talking about a portable studio here, so I need something that's going to last. What I've done on my Canon, I've got a Canon 7D here. I'm shooting it at 320 ISO, or 400 if you prefer. The reason for that, even though I typically like to shoot at 100 or 160 on that camera, is by coming up with the ISO, it allows me to bring the power on the flash down. 2 things, advantages to that. 1, my batteries last longer, and 2, the flashes recycle faster, so I can shoot a little quicker. So my flashes are generally set as my starting point at about 1/4 power. And I know some of you have made fun about me in the past when we did the outside shoots and I kept doing my 6-foot thing that I was 1/4 power in f8, but it really does work. And I generally will use 1/4 power as a starting point. Let's see. Someone asked about the C-stand that I'm using. Do I use a 20 or 40-inch C-stand? There's actually 3 sizes, a 20, a 30, and a 40. The stand we have on set actually today is a 30. I personally favor the 20. The reason for that is a 20 fully extended, still the base is going to come up about this high. And when I add my mount and light on top of that, it generally will cover pretty much anybody standing height. And it's just a little bit smaller. The 30, although it will go a lot higher, if I have a sitting subject, doesn't allow me to get low enough. So I'm a big fan of the 20. Somebody asked about backgrounds and stands if you're flying with your equipment. little bit more intense than we're talking about today, but I'll send you, or we'll give you an email address you can send a question to, and we can talk about that offline. For those of you that are asking about studio strobes, again, not the subject today, but somebody was asking about inexpensive studio strobes, whether to go with just flash units or a small strobe set. Again, subject for another day, but send me that email. I'll be happy to talk with you offline. And then the question that amused you, somebody asked, is Bethany related to me? She's my granddaughter. No, actually, she's not. We started working together 2 years ago about?
3 years ago.
It's been 3 years,
Yeah.
really? So we've been hanging out a lot over the years. So, in fact, we were just talking about that this morning, how before you got to know me, we were somewhat formal with each other. And we've spent a lot of time together. So she's been at my house, met my wife. I know all about her wedding plans. So we become friends. We have a good time together. So we're not related. No. We like hanging out. All right. Let's see. Again, the question, somebody said that the video stream looks blue, but when you see the finished shot, the background looks brown. The reason, again, for that is the video stream is just at video speed, so that's going to be typically a 50th of a second is the shutter speed on the video camera, where when I shoot the flash, or shoot the camera, I'm at 1/60th or 1/200th of a second. So what that's doing is basically killing the small amount of contribution that the blue light in the background is making. So it shows up through the video feed, it disappears when we actually shoot the strobes. That said, some of the modeling lights or the still lights on our hot lights were showing up in some of the stills. When I start shooting now at 200th of a second, this should go pretty neutral. You're not going to see the yellow contribution from the studio lights or the blue contribution from the gelled light. And as far as from the back wall, Bethany is, let me see, I'll use my famous spread here. She's about 6 feet off the back wall.
Works for everything.
Yeah, you just got to carry me around with you. Maybe I should have like cutouts sold with me going like this, and you can always know what 6 feet is. That would be pretty weird. Okay, let's get some shooting done. So, considerations when you're doing shooting. Am I going to get by with one light? Do I need to add a second light? Now, Bethany's against a light background. So, a second separation light isn't as important because we've got the light on the other side of her face. However, if this was a darker background, since your hair is almost jet black, I would really need a second light, a rim light, or a kicker, or a hair light to separate that out. But let's just start with the one light, and let's take a look and see about metering this. So actually, I'm going to move this light up a little bit. You can stay where you are. I'm going to bring this in fairly close. And I'm feathering it a little bit. The light is actually pointing here. It's in front of her. So I've got some light here. And by having the front of the softbox out a little further, it gives it a chance to wrap around the side of her face here. Now, when I'm metering a situation like this, I've only got one light. And I really am concerned that the side of her face facing the light doesn't get blown out. I want this to be my perfect exposure. Now, Bethany has a very medium skin tone. If you were really, really, really white, like white face painted white, then I would be really concerned and always meter directly towards the light. I don't know if you tan. No, I didn't think so. If you were someone that tanned in the summer, then I might come around a little bit and meter back towards the camera because you've got a little bit of a tan. If you were Hispanic or African American, then again I would meter back towards the camera. But since you're fairly light-skinned, and it is November and you're going to Mexico next week, I will meter directly into the light. So I'll take my reading here, and what do we got? F8. So I'm at 320th of a second at F8, and I'm going to make my shutter speed, I'm going to go 1/200th of a second, because what I want to do is I kind of want to kill the contribution of the studio lights on my background. I want it to be clean. So let me go ahead and set that on my camera. And again, I'm shooting tethered. I've got my tether tool right here. So let me get out of the way. Bear with me 1 second. So I'm actually going to be able to show you this live. Actually, I'm going to share my computer screen so you can see the images coming up. And what I've also done is I have created a preset for Lightroom so that when the image comes in, the white balance And the custom camera profile have already been applied to the image. Let's see if we got it now. Here we go. And lovely. Actually came out really nice. Jen, if you would actually just show my computer screen a second. So you can see there's the image we just took. Yeah, I'm getting in between F8 and F9, so I'm going to play it safe. I don't want any of the light side of her face to blow out. I'm kind of going for the deep shadow contrasty look. So turn your face that way a little bit more. Good, all right. And actually kind of lean in towards me a little bit and tilt your head. Yeah, right like there. Beautiful. All right, now give me happy, Bethany. Turn your head towards me a little more. Great, right there. And I'm going to shoot a vertical. Great. Love it. Coming out beautiful, and you get to see the beauty of shooting tethered is you get your results right away. And by having that preset dialed in, white balance, color is all perfect, ready to go. Now, if you want to soften facial features, then it's time maybe to bring in a second light. But before I do that, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to bring in our second light. Actually, put you to work again. I'm going to bring in the second light, and I'm going to use this second softbox as a rim light to add some brightness on her hair on the opposite side. Now, I put this pocket wizard on zone B. So what I need to do is tell them, with the meter, just tell it to turn on zone B. In fact, Rick, I'll see if you can actually zoom in on here. There we go. Now you can see A is turned on, but B, C, and D are turned off. I'm on channel 18 on the standard channels. And by hitting the B, let me just angle that so you can see a little better, and hit OK, now I just turned on this second light. That's how easy it is to do. Now I can take a meter reading of the second light coming into her hair, and I'm getting F5. So I've got F5 there, F9 here. So that's 1 2/3 stops apart. May not be enough for your hair, because her hair is almost jet black. Generally, rule of thumb for your hair or fill light that I use as a starting point, if the hair is really black, then I'll come close to whatever my main light is. If I'm F9, I'll go F8 or so. If you've got somebody that's got very light hair, you've got somebody that's blonde hair, then I'll probably drop it at least a stop, kind of where we are. So let's take a look and see what happens with the fill light 1 1/3 stops under. Let's see what it does for the hair and see how much of a contribution. It is a little bit. Actually, if we bring up the screen here, Jen, if you take a look low, on the right-hand side of her hair, you can see it's starting to get a little bit of brightness, but not quite enough. So what I'm going to do is, I could increase the power, but since I've got head and shoulders shots going here, I'm just going to bring in the lead a little closer, take my reading. Now I've got 6.3 and 9. Okay, so now we're getting closer. So let's take a look, do that again. Beautiful. And we're getting a little more contribution. It's actually starting to light up this side of your face, which isn't exactly what I was after. So what I'm going to do is bring it slightly behind her, still keep it close, and yeah, no, that's good, that's good. Let's go with that. And here we go. Let's see how we do here. And still not enough. I got to come around a little bit this way. Let me check my metering again. Okay. All right, let's try that. And I kind of like that. It's actually starting to create a little bit of a light on the other side of her face, adding a little bit more shape. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting look where you've got one little dark side and one little light side. Now, if you want to soften that ratio, I can bring the second light around more to the front of her. So why might you want to do that? What if you're shooting somebody a little older than you, which is most people? If you're shooting somebody older and they're more concerned about wrinkles, what have you, you're pretty wrinkly, you know. Generally, and it isn't fair, is it? With guys, if you have an old man, you know, it brings out character to highlight all the wrinkles. I haven't had any women ask me, can you please highlight my wrinkles? So by having the light come across, that's going to add more shadows to those features. To soften that up, that's again, either I want to bring my softbox a little bit more around to the front, or we could use those umbrellas that we shot with earlier. That would work with someone older. Or I've got my second light. I can just bring it more as a fill now. And again, my main light hasn't changed, so that's where my exposure is going to come from. So let's take a look with this angle here. And now you can see we've got just a little bit of fill. We've got a much more gentle shadow side. Still got a nice ratio. And again, that's what the meter can tell us. You can't do this with your camera. The camera can't tell you the light readings on either side. It can only tell us the sum. So let me just shoot, let me see. Well, that last one was horizontal. Let's do a vertical. I love the jewelry. You make this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, let's get your hair off your shoulder a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. All right, that's good. So guys and girls, if you like Bethany's jewelry, she makes it. Look for her on eBay? eBay. Okay, here, would you hold the camera again a second? So again, by bringing in the second light and just bringing it around, then you have the ultimate control over the ratios, where you can get light to dark. You can make that ratio a little more gentle. Now, what do we do if we have a larger group?
Have to evenly distribute.
Yeah, we're going to have to evenly distribute the light, and softboxes probably are not going to be the answer. You're going to need a second light in that case also to create that even light pattern across the scene, and you got to be aware of shadows that are cast. So that applies when you start getting really probably 3 or more people, when you start getting larger groups, especially if you get 4 or more. Now, we had fun with our larger group. In fact, those of you guys that saw the invite, that was our larger group. First of all, you got to set up your lights so that the illumination is even across the subject. So in our case, we use 2 reflective umbrellas. Now, you don't want to have them both pointing in towards the middle, because that's going to create a hot spot. Generally, instead of 45 degrees from either side, about 30 degrees. So I would have my lights focused, one on either side, about this far apart. And by using 2 lights that way, and again, that's what we meter for. In fact, when we did this, I walked across the set and made sure that I was within about 1/3 of a stop all the way across. Again, only the meter can tell you that. Your camera just can't give you that information. Now, in addition, depth of field is something you got to be careful with when a big group is shooting, as you're going to see in our group shot that we're going to do in just a second. You might think f8, f11 is plenty, but it may not be. Depends on how close you are. Basically, the bigger you make the people in the frame, the less depth of field you have. So you got to be careful about that. If you have a really big group, one of the easiest ways to get around that is to actually curve the group so that everybody's kind of the same distance to the camera, so that the distance from the lens to each person remains the same. Now, we didn't actually have a large group to play with. So I had to improvise. And what would be better than an entire group of Bethanies? So the process, first, place your lights, make sure you get that even illumination across the scene. Meter across the scene, make adjustments to your lighting, and again, something only that your handheld meter can do. Put your camera on a tripod in this case and shoot away. And what I did for this was took all the shots and then composited it later in Photoshop. So All right, so that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I just got to sit there, and you're the one that did all the work, yes. So a couple more questions. Good questions coming through. Somebody asked, in my actual portable studio, how many light sources do I really use? In the portable studio, really typically I use 2, and I'll probably bring a reflector as well if I feel I need a little fill. Of course, I know what I'm getting into ahead of time. If I have a big group, then I might bring a couple of more lights, depending if I have to illuminate the background at all for any reason. And that's what's nice about having those old strobe units around. I'm using, in here, I've got a Canon 7D I'm shooting with. I have 2 580 EX2s in each of these softboxes. Sometimes if I'm at a client's home, though, I'll need some light to illuminate the background. Maybe they have a really nice fireplace or something. In that case, I will use a couple of my older strobes. I'll pull out my Vivitar 283s that I've had for longer than Bethany's been here. Sun packs. I've got all kinds of old flashes sitting around. I just hooked them up to a Pocket Wizard, and I'll use those for fill. Let's see. Somebody asked about it. Somebody asked what a beauty dish is used for. Subject for another day, but if you go on to prophoto.com, that's where they live, isn't it, Jen? The webinars John Williamson just did. Our friend John Williamson just did a webinar on using hard light shaping tools, including a beauty dish and a magnum and all that. So they're on prophoto.com if you want to take a look at those. Let's see. Someone asked for a rim hair light. Would a snoot or grid help control the light fall off in location? Absolutely, which is why I used a grid here. That's why I'm using the grid, to keep it from bleeding off into the background or onto clothing. Generally, somebody asked about a snoot, which is basically just a small tube that has a small opening. I don't usually use those for rim light. Sometimes for a hair light, if it's positioned up high, a snoot will really keep your light focused. Generally, I find the grid works well for me. Let's see. Now, okay, and this is really interesting. Someone said that my laptop monitor looks good, but my Lightroom histogram shows quite a bit of shadow clipping and quite a bit of space to the right. Would I comment on that? Absolutely. It's a good point. It's why, it's one of the reasons you cannot trust the histogram. So let's bring up Lightroom. Let's bring up my screen here. So let's take a look at this histogram on the upper right-hand corner. Now, if I click on the shadow clipping warning in the upper left, you can see this, the only piece that's clipping is this one very deep bit of shadow on Bethany's shoulder in her hair, which is practically jet black anyway. Certainly not something to worry about. If I hit clipping, nothing. However, the histogram, because of her dark hair and the way the lighting is set up, it looks exactly as it should. This is why you get into trouble if you trust the histogram on your camera rather than trust what your light meter is telling me. I can tell that my screen, and I have a calibrated monitor, I can tell that this is perfectly exposed. Yes, the histogram looks pushed off to the left a bit, but again, it's relative. It's showing me that a large percentage of the image is down here, just below 50%, and I have this big clump here, which really is what it's telling me. That's Bethany's hair. That's what that part of the histogram is showing us. Now, other than the whites of her eyes, which are almost pure white, there is nothing else in this image that is pure white. So the histogram is actively reflecting what should be happening. You can see, I don't know how well you can see it, right on the very right-hand side, there is a little bit of data right there, which basically would probably be just the whites of her eyes. But this is a correct histogram for this image. And I, too, have sometimes in the past, I've gotten over it, not completely trusted my meter. In fact, I just pulled out the 358 here, which I can also fire my lights from right here. Gave me the same reading. There's my F8. Trust these things. Don't go by your camera's meter. Don't even, obviously if something's wrong, if you saw that histogram and she had blonde hair and was wearing white clothing on a white background, then that histogram would be telling you there's a problem. But since her hair is so dark, and since I was fairly close in as far as the cropping went, her hair really was a large percentage of the image. And all a histogram is the distribution of the lights and darks. So use it as a tool to know if something's really wrong, but if you have a calibrated monitor and you're using the reading that comes out of your meter, trust it. It really knows what it's going to do. But that's a really good question. And really, if you learn to use a meter and trust the information it's going to give you, The histogram is a tool, but it's definitely not going to be the end-all, be-all. Let's see. Somebody asked if you can use a light meter when you're shooting on high-speed sync setting. You can if you're using the Pocket Wizard Plus, or the Pocket Wizard Mini and Flex system, and you're doing high speed under TTL. I'm using Pocket Wizard Plus 3s, which are just standard, they're not TTL. So these systems are going to be limited to the flash sync speed of my camera. Subject for another day. In fact, if a couple of webinars ago, I think we did where we were shooting 2,000th of a second. Yes, you can, but you need to be doing TTL metering, and that's where the 478 DR comes in. Let's see, what else? So if you want to do the high-speed flash sync, then you're going to be definitely needing, be shooting TTL. Zoom on the Speedlight. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, your Speedlight has a zoom setting in it. Generally runs from around 28 millimeters to 105 millimeters. For using the shoot-through, I'll generally set it wider. I'll put it closer to 28. In my Apollo softboxes, both the square and the tall one, I have it set for 50 millimeters. They're kind of designed that way. The way the reflective surfaces seem to really work just with that 50, which is its standard setting. And I think that's all the questions for now. A couple of people asked about lenses. Lenses for a portable studio are going to depend somewhat on the environment. How big a room do you have to work in? Same thing goes with shooting full frame versus shooting a crop frame sensor. This is a 7D. This is a crop frame sensor. And I've got a 28 to 75 2.8 lens on here. I do like this lens for inside because it goes fairly wide. But with a crop frame sensor, this 28 millimeters really turns into, what is that, 6, 18, about closer to 40 millimeters, maybe a little higher than that. So it's not as wide as you think. I do also have a 17 to 50 that I'll also use. The whole crop versus full frame thing kind of depends on your subject matter and the way you like to shoot. I like to shoot kind of at a medium distance generally, and there's a lot of folks that love to shoot 70 to 200s only when they're doing portraits. I like to shoot probably most of the time from a distance about this, which is, guess what?
Trusty.
My trusty about 6 feet. And with a short zoom like this, it really gives me the ability to go about 3/4 up to a really pretty close in. In fact, let me try one right here. I just moved my other light, but let's see what works here. Oh, did my computer go to sleep on me? Yeah, my computer went to sleep on me again. Sorry about that. All right. In fact, let's talk about tethered shooting while I'm here. Tethered shooting is really nice. It provides you with a couple of benefits. First of all, if you have a card in your camera and you're tethered to your computer, then your images are getting captured in two places. They're getting written to the card, and then they're getting sent into the computer. Also, images show up on the computer as you take them, which is really nice for if you have an audience. Mostly if you're photographing children and the parents are there and mom keeps talking to the kids, which we tell them, leave them alone. But the combination of having a preset with the white balance and the color saturation all set, they get to see images that are pretty near to a finished image, other than some minor retouching, come right up. So let me just reset everything here on my tethered shooting so that we can do this, because there's another really cool thing you can do that we started doing in studio, and people love it. In fact, I think, Bethany, I think you like it too with the iPad.
I did.
So let me just take a quick shot. Okay. Lovely. If you would hold the camera again. The other piece that I really like to do you have the remote-y thingy? Thanks. The other thing that I really like to do is include an iPad into the shooting. And what I use is a utility called Air Display. And let me bring that up here. And what Air Display allows you to do is to use your iPad as a second monitor. And what ends up happening is, in Lightroom, in fact, Jen, if you would show my Lightroom screen again a second. If you take a look down here in the lower left-hand corner of Lightroom, there is a thing for a second monitor. And I can turn that on here. And let me just come up to my utilities, and you can see I've got my air display. Let me just turn on air display on my iPad. So let me just wait for it to show up, and you see there my screen just kind of went blue on me here. Hold on a second. It's connecting. All right, so let me zoom back out. And let me turn off mirroring, because I don't want it, if you can see here, Rick, actually, if you'll zoom into my iPad. Jen, go back to the video screen a second. So you can see I'm actually seeing my Lightroom screen mirrored here. And what I want to do is go into my control panel and turn off mirroring. So now my iPad is just a second display. Just go to Arrangement and turn off Mirror Displays. And then, as it resets, my iPad becomes just a loop view. In fact, I can put it next to my computer here. You can see it's just a loop view of what's going on. So as I shoot, the new images will show up on the iPad, and I can hand this to a parent or someone else that's in studio, or if you're doing commercial work, an art director, and they can watch the images as they show up. In fact, here, let me give you that. You can actually, this would be interesting. We can have you pointing that down like that. So we can see Bethany holding the iPad. She looks like she's doing Apple commercials. I take another shot of that. And of course the iPad brightness got overpowered by the strobes. But you can see the image start to show up on the computer. Jen, if you'd actually show in Lightroom, you can see there's the image with her holding the iPad, and she gets to see it also as it pops up on the screen. So it really is a wow moment for folks when they see this. Here, I'll give you the camera back a second. So let me go back to my questions for a second here. Also, I mentioned tools like the jerk stopper and the computer table from Tether Tools go a long way towards protecting your computer. And the combination of that and using an iPad as a second display allows the clients to see the images that they captured. And as I mentioned, it's a great way to keep parents out of the way.
But involved.
But involved, yes. They feel they're involved, but they're out of the way. Let's see. So someone said at a camera speed of 200th of a second, wouldn't I have to use high-speed flash? No. My camera sync is 250th of a second at this particular camera, so no need. And I can just shoot right from here. Give me a little, let's see. Chin down a little bit. Oh, that's it. Give me the snarky, I know something you don't know look. Okay. Actually, bring your hair off of your shoulder, yep, because I'm casting a shadow from the main light. Better, good. Beautiful, I love that. I love that look. But again, as we were talking earlier, if you want to go with a little bit softer look, then really one of the simplest ways to do that, Jen, if you go back to live for a second, one of the simplest ways to soften that light is to just bring the softbox around a little bit. So I'm going to remeter. Oh, Bethany has the 358 here. So we'll take our meter reading. We're still at F8. And if you hold that. And you can see now we've got a little bit softer shadow. And I can continue to further soften that just by bringing the light around. And you've seen in the past where we've done kind of the profile shots that we did earlier. For those of you that are interested about that, for the profile, I would actually come here. Actually, if you'd face the light. Almost, yeah, completely profile. And nothing changed as far as distance goes. So actually, I did make it a little closer. Let me go ahead and meter that again. Look right at the light. I'll move this up a little bit. So by bringing this, actually I'm going to move it back. By bringing it back, then it's going to have less of a wrap. I want to have a little more of a profile. So turn yourself completely around and look right here. So let me just remeter that. And let's take a look. Now we're at 7.1, and I'm just going to do a profile shot here. And it's a little too much light on the background, but you can see that the exposure now is still really nice. And for those of you that like histograms, now you can see by having the light there with the light background, we've got a much more even histogram with that big bump in the middle. Actually, I'll put this back on the tripod. By the way, on the iPad, if you do want to use that second monitor, and you might have noticed that I had my background set at black, it's simply a matter of from your computer going over in Command or Control clicking on the background, which defaults to gray, and then you can tell it I want it to be black or light gray or dark gray. I'm about out of time. You comfortable? You just been, you're comfortable just sitting there?
Fine.
All right. Oh, let me check to see if there's any other questions before we finish up. But I hope you've seen that really with just an absolute minimum of equipment, probably using a lot of stuff you already own, you can create really a very portable, very easy to use, very effective system. Learning to use a light meter is what allows you to concentrate on getting great photographs and not worry about the exposure or the light ratios. Set it up, take your readings, put those numbers in the camera, and shoot away. There's no guessing, there's no chimping. You're just going to get great images. Again, as I mentioned, if you joined us at the beginning when there was a video starting to play where you and I chatted about chimping, me from the camera, the photographer's point of view, Bethany from a model point of view, you can see that the whole idea of chimping, which is looking at the camera after every shot, and it comes from
Second guessing.
yeah, it disrupts the flow. It really is a mess. Go ahead and use the histogram and use the image on the back of the camera as you're setting things up. But once you've got that done, stop it. Start shooting. Use it for framing. If you're shooting tethered, you're seeing the images come in full screen. Trust the meter, and it really will change the experience. All of this together adds up to an easy-to-use traveling setup that will make for that great customer experience. It shows you know what you're doing. It keeps your equipment from getting in the way, and it gives you time to focus on your subject without having to constantly be distracted. And it really makes for better images. Did you have fun doing this?
I did.
So we got one more for this session. Whatever. We have one more for this grouping of webinars, which we're going to do in about 3 or 4 weeks. Our next session is going to be about portrait compositing. So what we're going to do is same thing. We're going to set up our lights, but we're going to set up our lights based on where we want you to end up, rather than in the studio. So what we're going to do is shoot against a white background and shoot against a green screen. And then we're going to composite. We're going to pull Bethany out of the background, and it just really allows you to put anybody pretty much wherever you want. You can put them in another location, another planet, any kind of situation. You just need to dress and light appropriately for the scene that you plan on putting them in. And once you get that, really, your imagination is the only limit. That's really, so you have to let me know what kinds of things you'd like to do.
Sounds fun.
So I think we're done for today. Until next time, thanks to our sponsor, Sakonic. Thank you for coming in and putting up with me again. And again, if you joined us late on the little video that we talked about before we started, where we talked about chimping, that's going to play right after our closing slide. So take a look, and I hope to see you online again soon. Until then, bye-bye. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Bethany first is because it all has to do with kind of your approach and flow. Now, you're an experienced model, but you've also had times in your life when you weren't an experienced model. And what I want to talk about is how, as a photographer, you deal with your subjects. And one of the subjects that sticks in the craw of some people is the whole concept of what's called chimping. You've probably seen it, and it's when people stop after every shot and they look at the camera.
Definitely.
And it can be annoying, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with looking at the back of your camera. It's a great educational tool. It's going to give you feedback. You're going to get to see if there's plants sticking out of their heads, or if your exposure's wrong, or your flash isn't firing, any of that kind of stuff. But do that before you start your shoot. There's no reason for your subject to be on set. I've got my meter here. I've got a Sakonic 478 DR. And what I would do is place myself in the set. I've got my light sitting right here. I just take my reading, and there it is. That's what I put in the camera. I'm done. Now, what else are we going to use for color?
Our anti-color checker.
Yes. So you
Passport.
you guys, of course, associate this face with this device. Do this also. This will give you a chance for a custom white balance or a perfect white balance, or if you're shooting tethered, which I'll show you later on how to set a preset for that. But by having a profile, then we know the color is going to be perfect. get that stuff out of the way before you start shooting. So, Bethany, what I wanted to ask you is, you've seen this happen, I'm sure.
Yes,
And
a few times.
yes, to me, one of the problems with chimping is, again, the LCD on the back of your camera is a great learning tool. It's really going to give you that instant feedback. Did you ever do shoots where they actually used Polaroids?
Actually, no.
Okay,
Nope.
before your time.
Yes.
You know, photographers used to use Polaroids for their test shot, and they'd have to peel, you know, let them sit and peel them apart and do their testing that way. Well, now we have the LCD for that, and it's a great learning tool. However, once you start to shoot, if you continue to chimp, by the way, I've heard the word comes from people going, ooh, 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 you know, kind of like making chimp noises as
That
they're
makes
constantly,
sense.
you know, ooh, ooh, look at this.
Yeah,
Do that before you get started or after you've done your sequence, not in the middle of a shoot.
I agree.
Now, for me, there's two big problems if you do chimping. The first is flow. Now, you as somebody who's experienced in front of the camera, you get into a flow. You're talking to the photographer or you're getting instructions and you start moving your head and your body shape and all. And I'm sure you've had photographers that start chimping
Yes, I
when
have.
they do that. So what does that do to you?
It can go two ways, I think, for the subject. You can, it just takes you out of what you're doing, and you can underthink things, and your mind starts going because you're waiting for the photographer to continue shooting.
So it's like every shot's the first shot of the series.
Exactly. Or you overthink it, and you're thinking, oh, am I doing something wrong? Is he trying to take it into a different direction? And then you overthink it, and then it comes out, you're posing too much.
So what ends up happening is the bottom line is it destroys the
Disrupts,
flow.
yeah.
It destroys the flow. Because you start to get into a rhythm. You as the photographer will start to see things happening. You start taking your shots. Your model starts to relax after the
Exactly.
first couple of shots. And if every shot is a first shot, which ends what's happening when you have that constant chimping, it's never going to get relaxed.
It's a new shoot
For every shot.
Every shot, yeah.
Yes. The other part of it is, and we talked about this earlier, is that when you chimp, you miss some of those what can be considered decisive moments. Now, again, Bethany's experience and used to being in front of the camera, but most people are not. And I'm sure there was a time when you were not used to be in front of the camera. And a lot of times you've probably noticed that the best shot you ever got, even you as a photographer, you're taking a snapshot of somebody, you might notice when they don't know it's coming.
A candid shot.
A candid shot, that unguarded moment. Their face is relaxed, they're not paying attention to the camera. And if you're constantly chimping, you're going to miss that. Now, even when I'm working with Bethany, as experienced as she is, I'll watch you sometimes, and after the flow, after the sequence is done of the shoot, you still kind of relax. You know, your shoulders come down a little bit, you let your breath out, because you're almost like, there's a slight holding of the breath. You know, you're trying to maintain that erect posture and everything. And then when you relax, your body relaxes, your face relaxes.
Natural.
It becomes more natural. And that's kind of defined for both wedding and portrait photographers as what's called the moment in between the moments. And even when I'm working with Bethany, I don't want to get stuck chimping on the camera and miss that. Because even after I'll tell her the sequence is done, sometimes I'll just continue to take a couple more shots, and sometimes those...
Sneaky. Sneaky shots.
Well, sometimes they're the best ones, because you know,
So true.
you've done it the same way.
Yes.
So the whole thing about having everything set up ahead of time. I'll use the meter. This is really important because this eliminates one of the biggest reasons for chimping, and that's trying to check exposure on your camera, which is a bad idea anyway. You can't trust the histogram on the camera because it's going to be influenced by the scene and how much of the dark sofa is in the frame and what color clothing you're wearing. If I'm zoomed into you with your dark hair, it's going to influence what you see on the back of the camera. Don't let it. Trust what you see on here. Don't go by the histogram. So I simply take my meter reading, and there's my numbers. I put these numbers in the camera, and then I get to concentrate on the shoot. So that's what we're going to do.
Sounds
We're
good.
going to start shooting. What we're going to do is use a couple of different light modifiers. Again, all designed to be very portable. And Bethany's going to do 2 jobs. She's not only going to be our model, but she's going to be assistant. And I hope it'll be interesting for you, too, to see
Definitely,
kind of both
yes.
sides of it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to work with is what's called a shoot-through umbrella. Just what it sounds like, and we'll take a look at it in just a second.